Breaking tonight, King Felipe shares touching moment with Princess Leonor at royal celebration. The palace was alive with anticipation. Glittering chandeliers, polished marble floors, the quiet murmur of dignitaries greeting one another. Everything about the evening screamed tradition, elegance, ceremony. But then, amidst the formalities, something unexpected happened. King Felipe, standing in the grand hall, turned toward Princess Leonor. It wasn't just a look, it was a moment. A pause that made the entire room hold its collective breath. For a second, the pomp and the pageantry faded. There was only father and daughter, an intimacy that no crown could overshadow. It's rare to see royalty so openly human. Rare to see a king, whose public life is so calculated, show tenderness so unguarded. And yet, here it was. The smile they shared, subtle but undeniable, said more than any speech, any public statement could. But what made this moment even more remarkable wasn't just the affection. It was the timing, the context, the quiet acknowledgement of a bond that has weathered scrutiny, expectation, and the weight of history. Earlier that evening, the palace corridors had been buzzing. Officials adjusting their schedules, staff ensuring every detail aligned with decades of tradition. Princess Leonor, poised and confident, moved through the room with the grace that comes from growing up in the public eye. But behind that poise, there is a young woman aware of the immense responsibility awaiting her, and the subtle weight of her father's gaze, steady, approving, reassuring. It's a dynamic often hidden from public view. Royal life is a constant performance, a balancing act between duty and personal identity. And yet, in that fleeting glance, we saw the real connection. Not as monarch and heir, but as father and daughter. This celebration was more than just ceremony. It was a milestone, a marker of heritage, a reminder of the continuity of the crown. King Felipe, whose reign has navigated both grandeur and turbulence, knows the importance of these public displays, but he also knows the private language of family. And that moment with Leonor communicated volumes without a single word. Observers later described the interaction as heart-stopping, and it's easy to understand why. In a room full of polished formality, the genuine human connection stood out like a beacon. How does one reconcile the public expectations of royalty with the private realities of love and guidance? In that instance, King Felipe offered an answer, subtle yet profound. Princess Leonor's reaction was equally telling. A brief tilt of her head, a soft smile, and a hand lightly touching his arm. The gesture was fleeting, but it spoke of trust, comfort, and understanding. A shared history, yes, but also an awareness of the future, the roles they are destined to play, and the support they offer each other in a life watched by millions. It wasn't just a personal moment, it was symbolic. Across Spain, across the world, people watching could sense the depth beneath the surface. Royal protocol dictates restraint, but emotion cannot be fully constrained. The audience, both present and afar, felt a resonance that transcends titles and ceremonies. They glimpsed the humanity behind the crowns. And yet, questions linger. How does such a relationship evolve under the constant gaze of cameras, the scrutiny of history, the pressure of expectation? How does a king guide a future queen, balancing authority with affection, advice with autonomy? The interaction we witnessed was a masterclass in subtle mentorship. It wasn't performative, it was real, lived, and felt. Later in the evening, as speeches commenced and the orchestra swelled, King Felipe's eyes occasionally found Leonor's. Across the room, each glance was a thread tying past and future, father and daughter, monarch and heir. The celebration itself, though grand, became a backdrop for these smaller, infinitely meaningful moments. Inside the palace, aides whispered about the fleeting nature of such glimpses. It's rare, one remarked. And indeed, it is. Rare to witness royalty in a state so unguarded. Rare to see a father and daughter communicate so fully without speaking. Rare, in a world accustomed to spectacle, to find authenticity. The emotional depth of the evening didn't stop there. As Leonor accepted congratulations from distinguished guests, King Felipe watched silently, pride etched across his features. The subtle nods, the quiet adjustments of her posture, the reassurance in his presence, these were the invisible threads weaving their relationship together in plain sight. Observers noted the significance. In one swift interaction, viewers could interpret centuries of tradition, familial expectation, and personal devotion. It was the intersection of duty and intimacy. And as the night unfolded, the story continued. There were moments of levity. Laughter shared over minor mishaps, quiet whispers that passed unnoticed by most, the occasional touch of hands when words were unnecessary. These fleeting gestures painted a richer portrait of a royal family often reduced to headlines. They reminded everyone that behind the stately gowns and polished manners, there is connection, care, and the same complexity found in any family. The evening's finale brought a crescendo of pageantry. Toasts, applause, and music filled the grand hall. Yet even amidst this orchestrated splendor, the bond between father and daughter remained quietly central. Each gesture, each glance, each smile carried meaning beyond the surface. It reminded all present, and all watching, that royalty, while bound by tradition, is still deeply human. As guests departed and the chandeliers dimmed, the palace seemed to hold on to that magic. The fleeting moment between King Felipe and Princess Leonor lingered in the memory of those who witnessed it. Not because it was staged or spectacular, but because it was real. Because it showed that even in lives dominated by duty, love finds a way to express itself. And that is the story of the night, a celebration of heritage, a display of tradition, but most importantly, a touching reminder of the bond between father and daughter. King Felipe, ever the sovereign, showed the heart behind the crown. Princess Leonor, poised yet tender, demonstrated the grace and humanity that will define her future. This night will be remembered not for its grandeur, but for its subtlety. For its honesty. For that one moment when a king's pride and a daughter's love spoke louder than protocol ever could. As the palace doors closed, one question remains: how will moments like these shape the next chapter of Spain's monarchy? How will this bond influence the future, the decisions, and the leadership of a young princess destined to one day ascend the throne? Only time will tell, but for tonight, the world saw a king and his daughter at their most human, and it was unforgettable.